So thank you, St. James. Thank you. Thank God. And you have a new bishop. Her name is Marty, and I'm sure she'll be here at some point for confirmation and visitation. And she is a delight. She is I think she's the only, well, I know she's the only bishop that I'm aware of, but I think the only, she may be one of the few priests who's also an actual veterinarian. And we had a press conference, I guess it was Friday before we met with the clergy, and I said to the media, I said, Jesus said that we are his sheep. It seems fitting that a veterinarian should be a shepherd, Anyway, a joy to be with you. Thank you for all that you do, and may God bless you in everything, that you may bless this world in Jesus' name. Let me just offer a few words this morning on the season of Advent, but the year that is coming in terms of the lectionary. You may have noticed that the gospel readings in the 3-year cycle of the lectionary rotate between Matthew, Mark, and Luke. And then John gets interspersed all over the place. But they pretty much rotate so that you get a good dose of, I tell my Baptist friends, you got nothing on us. We read more Bible than you ever heard of. But this is the year of Matthew. And so you may notice that the gospel readings are coming from Matthew. And I thought I would share just some reflections on Matthew's gospel, which you'll be hearing for a while. And Matthew's gospel specifically as regards the coming of Jesus Christ. In the first chapter of Matthew, the birth of Jesus is told this way. Now the birth of Jesus, the Messiah, took place in this way. When his mother Mary had been engaged to Joseph, but before they lived together, clearly this is a first century story. But anyway, you need to edit that out of this. Too late now. Anyway, when his mother Mary had been engaged to Joseph, but before they lived together, she was found to be with child from the Holy Spirit. Her husband Joseph, being a righteous man, unwilling to expose her to public disgrace, planned to dismiss her quietly. But just when he had resolved to do this, an angel of the Lord appeared to him in a dream. Just when he had resolved to put her away quietly, an angel of the Lord disturbed him in a dream. I was a little boy in Sunday school, St. Philip Church, Buffalo, New York. I learned a poem that they taught us for a Christmas pageant one year. It was by Langston Hughes. And the poem said, "Hold fast to dreams. For life without a dream is like a bird with a broken wing that cannot fly. So hold fast to dreams." It's not an accident that there is great diversity in the presentation of the birth and the interpretation of the nativity and the incarnation of God in Jesus. There's real great diversity. I mean, the Bible is not a monolith. The New Testament is not a monolith. In fact, there's a reason there are 4 Gospels. I thought of that when the Native American communities teach us about the 4 directions. It's not an accident that there are 4 Gospels. Not an accident that there's a variety of teachings and interpretations and understanding. It takes a village. It takes a village to talk about this Jesus. It takes a village. And so you get in the New Testament a remarkable tapestry, a variety, understanding the meaning and the message of Jesus. And so, for example, in John's Gospel, Jesus, his coming into the world is spoken of poetically. He's spoken of as the eternal Word of God. And John says, in the beginning was the Word. You know this one. And the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And then the Christmas part is, and the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, full of grace and truth. That's John's poetic Christmas. And St. Paul in Galatians actually has a place where he talks about the coming of Christ in the world. Galatians, as Martin Luther in the 16th century said, is the Magna Carta of Christian liberty. Galatians is the epistle about freedom. At one point, Paul says, "For freedom Christ has set us free. Stand fast and do not accept the yoke of slavery again." That was Paul on a good day. He had some bad ones. and then when you get to Luke's gospel, Luke has this incredible understanding of the coming of Jesus through the lens of Mary. It's in Luke that Mary is about to have a baby and sings, "My soul doth magnify the Lord, and my spirit rejoices in God, my Savior." Why? Because he has put down the mighty from their seat and has exalted the humble and the meek. I was teaching a Bible study years ago when I was a priest in Southern Ohio. And man said, we were reading the Magnificat. Mary's words, he put down the mighty from their seat, exalted the humble and the meek. And he said, "I don't like this. That's communism." I said, "No, Karl Marx wasn't even born when this was written." That's Mary, the mother of Jesus. Right? And Luke's gospel depicts Jesus coming into the world through the lens of Mary. That's why it's Mary's story. She wraps him in swaddling clothes and lays him in a manger. It's Mary's story. A mother remembering how her first baby, was born. It's in Luke that you get shepherds watching their flocks by night. It's in Luke that the angelic chorus sings Gloria in excelsis Deo. Oh, there is a diversity of hearings and interpretations of the comings of this Jesus. And in Matthew, his coming into the world is the way beyond the nightmares that we often live into the dream that God intends for us. In Matthew, Jesus comes into the world on the wings of a dream. Go back to the story. Mary and Joseph are engaged. She finds out she's pregnant. She tells Joseph, "I'm pregnant." And it's a miracle. This child is conceived of the Holy Spirit. And Joseph, now doing what the Jewish rabbis do, it's called a midrash, where you read between the lines. I have a suspicion that Joseph is saying, "That's good, this child is conceived of the Holy Spirit. Give me the address of this Holy Spirit." And Joseph, the Bible says he is a just man. That he wants to do justice. In his mind, she has obviously done something wrong, and justice demands that the wrong be right. And so she must accept the reward and the punishment, if you will, of having done something wrong. But Joseph is a just man who brings justice and mercy together. And rather than exposing her to public humiliation, he comes up with a path that is both just and compassionate at the same time. He's going to put her away, justice, but he's going to do it quietly so nobody knows, mercy. But even that's not good enough for God. And it's in a dream that Joseph is disturbed. And that dream shows him a way that's greater than mere justice and greater than just compassion. That dream shows him the way of love. It says, "This is not a mess. This is a miracle, Joseph. You take that baby and you raise him at your home." And he does. Hold fast to dreams. But that's not the end of it. Later on, when the baby is born, in Matthew's gospel, only in Matthew's gospel, through the lens of Joseph, the baby is born, and word gets out that maybe God is breaking into history in the way that people had dreamed of and longed for so long. Maybe this is the child king who will show us the way to life as God has intended from the very beginning. Maybe this is, and King Herod hears about this. And he's enraged. The powers of the world will never be happy with this Jesus. I'm going to leave that one right there and just leave it there. And so Herod is looking for this baby that he might kill it. In come the wise men. Just like the church. Just as idealistic and wonderful and naive. They go to King Herod and they say, "Hey, Herod, have you heard there's a child king being born?" He said, "Yeah, I've heard that." He said, "We have seen his star in the east, and we have come to worship him. And we have brought gifts, gold and frankincense and myrrh to give to the child king. And we're going to go find the baby." Herod says, "Good. And we'll find him and give him the gifts." And he said, and Herod says, "When you find him, come back and let me know where he is, because I got a gift for him too." And so, just like the church, they're going to fall for it. They're going to go for it. They go off, they give the child the gifts, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. They worship, and they're about to return to Herod, and once again, they're disturbed by a dream. Do not go back to Herod. And they go home by another way. And then Herod, enraged, mounts a genocidal campaign, killing the Hebrew baby boys, just like in the days of Moses. And Joseph is warned in a dream. Take the baby and his mama and flee to Egypt. There you'll be safe. Yes, you'll be refugees. Yes, you'll be immigrants. Y'all hear that? And you are my children, so go there. And I have to tell you that one of the highlights for me of being presiding bishop was the discovery of a poster that people in Episcopal Migration Ministry had known about for years, and it had been around. But anyway, this poster comes from 1939, which really was the beginning of what became Episcopal Migration Ministries and what became Episcopal Relief and Development eventually. 1939, the beginning of World War II, refugees, especially Jewish refugees, are fleeing Europe, and the Episcopal Church organized a way to save refugees and resettle them and help people find safety and asylum here in the United States of America and in Great Britain. That was the origin of Episcopal Relief and Development and Episcopal Migration Ministries, which still goes on. We're having a hard time because we're not... Anyway, I'll leave the politics out of it, but we're having a hard time right now. We've been doing refugee resettlement. We've been caring for immigrants since 1939 and actually before that. And the poster showed Mary riding on the donkey with the baby Jesus. It was a painting with Joseph walking beside them. And in 1939, your church said on that poster, "In the name of these refugees, help all refugees." That's us. That's us. That's us. Therein is this dream. The dream of a God who's determined to save this world from the nightmare and help it realize the dream that God has had since God said, "Let there be anything at all." God has a dream. But I'm going to stop in a minute, don't worry. It's all over Matthew's gospel. It really is. When you get to the end of Matthew's gospel. Now Jesus is all grown up, and he's standing before Pontius Pilate on trial before the empire of the world at that time. Standing before Pilate, Pilate is about to sentence him to death, and then Pilate's wife comes in. This is in the 27th chapter of Matthew, the only gospel that tells this story. His wife comes in, and she says, "Pilate, have nothing to do with this just man, for I have been disturbed in a dream about him." Oh, I wanted to reach back through the corridors of history and grab Pilate by the shoulder and say, "Pilate, listen to your wife." Because Pilate, if you don't listen to your wife, history will only know you as a footnote in the Nicene Creed. He was crucified under Pontius Pilate. Pilate, listen to your wife. The truth is that dream was that same dream of God breaking into her life, breaking into the world, because for Matthew, Jesus is the embodiment of God's dream. Every time he opened his mouth, there is God's dream. Every time he touched somebody that nobody else would touch, there is God's dream. When he taught them, blessed are the poor and the poor in spirit. Blessed are the merciful, the compassionate. Love your enemies. Bless those who curse you. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. That's Jesus. Amen. That's God's dream. Oh, I like this church. Y'all give amen. Truth is, for Matthew, Jesus is the face of the dream of God. And this Jesus says, follow me. Follow me and help this world stop the nightmare. Follow me and help us realize a dream where there's plenty of room for us all. And in Matthew's gospel, it's fascinating. All of the gospels, Jesus is talking about love nonstop. That's in all of them. But Matthew has a spin on this love that makes it clear that for Matthew, this way of love that Jesus teaches is the way to end the nightmare and realize the dream. I realized this a couple years ago, 2 years ago, I think. I was home for Christmas. And I'll let you in on a secret. Bishops don't work much during Christmas. After Christmas, midnight mass, that kind of thing, you don't really need a bishop. You dress them up, put them in a chair, say hello, bishop. That's about it. And they have even less of a need for a presiding bishop. I'll go to the National Cathedral next week and they'll say, bye-bye, see you next year. And that's pretty much it. And it's actually, when I first became a bishop many years ago, I kept thinking I'm supposed to be doing something more. And I finally said, this isn't bad at all. I'm just not going to tell anybody. I'm not doing anything. So, Christmas comes and, we have services and all of that. And then after the services, I'm pretty much home for 2 weeks with nothing to do. And so, I try to look busy so my wife doesn't make up something for me to do. And this one Christmas, I think it was last year or the year before, I was watching TV and channel surfing. There weren't any football games at that time of the day. And so I was kind of surfing and I kept seeing this advertisement on CNN for a special that was going to come on about Ruth Bader Ginsburg. It was called The Notorious RBG. Yeah. Did y'all see that one? Yeah. And it was just, I said, now this is kind of curious. I said, well, I'm going to watch this. And I knew about Ruth Bader Ginsburg, but I didn't know all of her biography and everything. And so I actually ended up watching this incredible documentary about this remarkable woman's life. How she has been an advocate for women, an advocate for the poor, an advocate for those who have nobody to advocate for them. Since she first started practicing law, and when she first was breaking glass ceilings, when she was first being the only woman in the room with all the guys in the locker room. And that's a tough way to go. Let me tell you. I've never done it. I'm not a woman. But I'm saying, that's a remarkable feat. She's done it with grace. And so they were interviewing her at one point. And they said, you're a remarkable person. And you are probably as left-leaning as Justice Anton Scalia is right-leaning. And she said, yes. But you all are best friends. She said, yes. How? How is that possible? And she said, well, we both love opera. And so they and their spouses would go to the opera because they shared a common love. I don't think she was thinking love as I'm using it right now, but that's what she was describing. And then she said, well, we both love to travel. And so we and our spouses would, on vacation, travel the world together. We just loved it. And then she said, and we both love the Constitution of the United States. And she said, we stand together on that. We may disagree about interpreting it and applying it, but we love it, what it stands for, we the people. And then he said, well, tell me about interpreting the Constitution. And she became a law professor. Any lawyers in here right now? Or any who will admit it. I know there's some in here. I know the Episcopal Church. I know they're here. And she went on and she became a law professor, and she talked about the evolution of law, evolution of jurisprudence in this country. And she talked about Marbury versus Madison, that profound Supreme Court case, Justice John Jay, 1824, if I remember it correctly, Justice John Jay. Because before that, all of the states really thought they were all kind of independent and just had a kind of confederation, so like the Episcopal Church. But nonetheless, they thought of themselves that way. And they didn't think that federal law could override local, state, and local laws. And they had to learn that we are one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all, not just for some, for all. And they had to learn that. And so in the case of Marbury versus Madison, somebody had challenged whether or not the law of the nation superseded the law of a state or a locality. And the Supreme Court ruled in Marbury versus Madison that federal law and that a decree of the Supreme Court is the supreme law of the land. That was a defining moment in the history of jurisprudence and of this country. In Matthew, a lawyer goes to Jesus. And he asked Jesus, what is the supreme law of God? What is the greatest of the laws of Moses? And Jesus reaches back to Deuteronomy, reaches back to Leviticus, and he said, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind. This is the first and the great commandment. The second is just like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two, and here it is, on these two hang all the law and the prophets. Only Matthew tells the story that way, because the way of love is the law of God, and it is the way. It is the only way to end the nightmares and realize God's dream. Some years ago, and I'm going to sit down now. Some years ago, I was preached in Southern Ohio, and this is back in the early 80s. And a preacher was going to speak at Ohio State. I saw a football game. It was kind of somebody back there, my candidate was rooting for Wisconsin. I forgot where, excuse me. He was, I wasn't. Deal with him. But anyway, he was speaking at Ohio State, a noted preacher and speaker. This is early 1980s. His name was Desmond Tutu. Anyway, he was speaking, and so a bunch of us, Episcopalians from a variety of churches, we all kind of caravanned up from Cincinnati up to Columbus. And we got there, and the Archbishop spoke. I can't remember if he had been awarded the Nobel Peace Prize yet or not. I've forgotten now. And I don't remember the entirety of his speech. But what I do remember is how he ended. This was early 80s. Nelson Mandela wouldn't be released from prison for 10 plus years. This was the early 1980s, when the state emergencies had been declared throughout South Africa. Early 1980s, when apartheid was its most ferocious, which is often what happens when the change is about to occur. This was the early 1980s when those funerals, you may remember burning tires. You may remember those funerals, public funerals, which were moments of prophetic protest. This was the early 1980s when, frankly, nobody knew what was going to happen to South Africa, whether it was going to turn into a racial bloodbath or whether South Africa would find another way. And the Archbishop stood up and spoke to a largely secular audience, and then said this: I believe that one day my beloved South Africa will be free. I believe that she will be free for all of her children. Her black children, her white children, her colored children, her Asian children. One day, South Africa will be free for all of her children. I believe it. Because I believe that Jesus was raised from the dead by the power of a love that the most ferocious empire in history could not stop. I believe it, and then he ended, because I believe that God has a dream for my South Africa. St. James, God has a dream for you. God has a dream for this community. God has a dream for this state. God has a dream for these United States. God has a dream for this hemisphere. God has a dream for this global community. God has a dream for this earth, our Mother Earth, our island home. God has a dream for this world. God has a dream for every man, woman, and child who has ever or who will ever walk upon the face of this earth. Live for God's dream. Proclaim God's dream. Don't be ashamed of God's dream. Proclaim the way of love until the nightmare ends.
Amen. Amen.
God love you. God bless you. And y'all have a happy Christmas.